Gentlemen, welcome to By the Horns, a Bitcoin podcast about South Africa. And today I'm joined by John Y, who's not from South Africa, but we're going to talk about Bitcoin and Lightning and all kinds of interesting things. John, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Ricky.
Great to have you here. And before we jump into it, we discussed this off air, but the OPSEC of the mic and the pop filter is great. I love it. Like
Yes, it's a little less goofy than putting on one of those big masks.
it probably works better than a mask too.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so John, do you mind telling us a bit about yourself, how you came to Bitcoin and what you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, my name is John. I am the engineering lead right now at a company called Bitcoin Reserve. We are a Bitcoin-only brokerage operating out of the European Union and serving mostly Europe and Latin America. And yeah, before getting into Bitcoin, I was a software developer at a big tech company, and yeah, worked in that kind of space for over a decade, and slowly started discovering and learning more and more about Bitcoin, and eventually got to a point where I didn't really want to do what I was doing. So um, there was enough of a push and a pull, push from where I was because I couldn't convince them to work on anything with Bitcoin, and a pull from Bitcoin itself to kind of work on it full time. And so eventually left that and started doing various Bitcoin projects kind of on the side for fun, and eventually a few years ago started doing some work for Bitcoin Reserve. And right now there's that, and just always got side projects going on for fun mostly.
Very cool. So when did you get into Bitcoin? Is this like a recent thing or you've been
Yeah,
in for a while?
probably around 2016. Yeah, so it was kind of a slow process, I guess. Just discovering um, just I guess I knew about Bitcoin's existence even before that. I don't know when I first actually originally heard about it, but 2016 is when I started seriously trying to learn about it more and more. And yeah, eventually kind of was basically sold on the idea. Went through kind of first a few month phase of like trying to figure out altcoins and everything. Not thankfully not too long, but eventually kind of uh, very quickly like converged on kind of the maximalist standpoint, where it was just money is a zero sum game. Money just needs to be one thing. That's the whole point of money. And if you look at everything and what has the highest chance of actually succeeding as money, the answer is obvious. It's Bitcoin. So never really dove deep into any of the other things except just to know what they are, I suppose. I mean, I'm sure there's all kinds of shit coins out there that that I'm not even aware of. So don't really pay too much attention to that. I just focus on Bitcoin and things related to Bitcoin, like Lightning and Liquid and other layer twos.
Yeah, man. I think that's kind of the journey everyone's got to go through, right? Like you've got to go through the shitcoinery to realize why they are useless and why Bitcoin fixes it, right? Like I had the same thing. I got into Bitcoin same time as you, pretty much, and you find out about Bitcoin, and then very soon afterwards, you're like, oh, what are these altcoin things? Like maybe they're better Bitcoin, right? And then
Right, right.
took me about 2 years for the penny to drop that like money wants to be one thing, and
Yeah,
hard money drives out soft money, right? Like, and
right.
that's what it's all about. And so it's very interesting for me to see now with this bifurcation happening. Obviously, I'm from South Africa and we part of BRICS. Don't know how we got in there, but somehow South Africa got into BRICS early. But what's happening now is BRICS countries are starting to settle bilateral trade with each other
Mm.
in their own currencies, right? So it, I don't know if it's better or worse. Like obviously the dollar is being weaponized against them. South Africa is it's starting now because there's like been some allegations that we sent weapons to Russia. We don't know if that's true or not yet, but
Yeah.
anyway, it's obviously been weaponized against Russia and Iran, etc., for a long time. So now they're settling trade with each other in their own shitcoins, in their own national
Yeah,
currencies. I don't even know. That might even be worse than using the dollar for them,
yeah,
because now they have to trust each other not to debase each other's currencies,
right,
and their
right.
currencies are, have smaller pools of liquidity than the US dollar, are more thinly traded, all of that stuff, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, interesting
yeah,
to see
and
what happens there.
it's interesting too, like that phenomenon, like like Russia, I think, has this situation. I heard a recent news article about how they traded with India, got a bunch of Indian rupees, and now they don't know what to do with it. It's like, it was like the whole point of like the dollar being that like universal international currency, right? I mean, nations are slowly discovering, oh, you need this one thing that everybody can use. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. I guess the next step would be, next phase in their discovery would probably be BRICS to create its own sort of currency, right? I mean, there's talks about that
Yeah,
too. So, and then
yeah.
eventually they'll figure out, oh, that doesn't quite work either.
Exactly, man. So they've got this conference in August in South Africa, where that's exactly what they're talking
Mm,
about. They're coming here to
mm,
discuss the setting up of this BRICS currency. Um, but to me, that just seems like the SDR that the IMF runs, right? Like
yeah,
they've got this currency called the SDR, and they're going to try to create something similar, and
right.
maybe use the BRICS Bank to back it up. Now, unless they back that with like physical commodities, I don't quite know how they're going to create like a stable currency. And even if it's backed by commodities, like how's it going to be stable?
Yeah.
And like you, it just creates the same problem. Like
Yep.
it
Yep.
really doesn't get away from the root cause of the problem.
Hmm.
And BRICS is also like an uneasy alliance, right? Like they were kind of pushed into it by kind of because they had to be. Like I don't think anyone in BRICS really trusts each other.
Yeah.
So the like the opportunity to cheat or for the cartel like itself to cheat is quite high.
Yeah.
Um, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens. But yeah, like you say with Russia, like they accumulate these rupees now.
Hmm.
Bilateral trade between Russia and India goes predominantly in one direction of Russia selling raw materials and like energy to India.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much stuff Russia's buying back from India. So yeah, they end up accumulating all these rupees. And then if India has to, inflate the rupee, then Russia gets left holding the bag.
Yeah.
So they're going to figure this out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
In my opinion, all roads lead to Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
They'll they'll figure this out.
Yeah.
Um,
If
but
only
yeah,
there
it's
was
going to
some
be.
money the people who don't trust each other could use, right?
If only there was money for enemies, right? Wouldn't that
Yes.
be great? The other interesting thing, and I know we're going off on a tangent here, but the other interesting thing is Bhutan just came out and said they've been mining Bitcoin, right? I don't
Yeah.
know if that was fake news or not, but from what I hear, Bhutan has been mining some Bitcoin. Um, I have been saying this for a while. It's just a gut feel. I've got nothing to back it up, but I'm pretty sure Russia, if they're smart, which they are, they must be mining Bitcoin as well because they've got all that stranded energy in Siberia,
Hmm.
and they had a for a brief period didn't have people to sell their energy to before
Yeah.
India stepped in and was like, "We'll take your discounted oil and gas."
Yeah.
But if they, it'd be perfect for them to be monetizing that via Bitcoin mining in Siberia, right? Like at that point in time, it just
Right.
stabilizes things for them. So I'm pretty sure they are doing it already. Like I said, I've got no data to back this up or no facts to back it up. It's just my hunch. They got a lot of stranded energy, and why wouldn't they mine Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think it's pretty well known that there are mining operations in Russia now. Whether they are privately
Yep.
owned or directly done by the state, I don't really know. But I guess
Well,
that's
they
that
were
is the question,
they
right?
were privately owned, and
Yeah,
now
yeah,
they're owned by the state, right? Because
yeah.
the state seized all of
Right,
who
right.
was it? Which firm was it that had all this stuff seized by the Russian
Oh
government?
yeah, Bit River, I think.
Yeah, I can't remember the name. I think it was them. But yeah, they had a whole bunch of hash power just seized by the state.
Well, actually, no, no. I was thinking of a different incident. Maybe it's the same thing. Like there was an incident where the U.S. sanctioned, I think, a specific miner in Russia or something like that. But maybe it was
Was it
something.
a Compass? I think it was Compass Mining that had a bunch of their equipment seized
Yeah,
by the Russian government.
that's right. That's right.
And why would you seize Bitcoin mining equipment if you're not going to use it yourself?
Yeah,
Unless you're really stupid.
yeah,
Like, that doesn't make sense.
yeah,
Anyway, super
yeah.
interesting. Like, the game theory of this is now becoming really interesting. Like, we've got like
Mhm.
3 presidential candidates in the US
Oh yeah,
campaigning on Bitcoin,
yeah, yeah,
2 Republicans and a Democrat. Like,
yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It
Also, be
absolutely
interesting.
is.
Yeah. it's becoming a political issue. Like less than 15 years, it's less than 15 years old, and it's already a presidential issue in the
Yeah.
US. Like, that's wild.
I find it interesting too, like specifically with how these candidates, like one observation is it's not one sided to one party, right? I mean, there's Democrats endorsing it and Republicans endorsing it. And another interesting thing is if you sort these candidates by age, I'm pretty sure the two old ones are the anti-Bitcoin ones.
Yeah, so I know Elizabeth Warren's got the anti-crypto, who's trying to start an anti-crypto army.
Oh, sure.
Which
I
is
just meant like with the presidential candidates, right? If you take
oh,
the
of
two
course, yeah, yeah,
old ones, Biden and Trump,
yeah.
they're both like, I mean, Trump is kind of wishy-washy all over the place, I suppose. But
He's shilling NFTs, isn't he?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Look, you got to give it to him. He knows how to make money.
yeah, yeah,
And if there's a grift to be had, it's the NFT grift. Like,
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah,
Anyway, we've
yeah.
gotten way off track. But like, what I actually want to chat to you about is the recent spike in fees that were driven by the ordinals, right?
The
The
NFTs.
use of ordinals, and that drove up the fee market, right? So on one hand, you had these people saying Bitcoin security model sucks long term because miners aren't going to be incentivized once the mining subsidy goes away. Like, how are they going to make enough money? And then fees went through the roof for the first time ever. People were being paid more in fees than they were for mining for the block subsidy. But then obviously fees went through the roof, and now we have Lightning, as opposed to when this happened in 2017, when Lightning was still in its infancy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, from your perspective, what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, we have Lightning now, but I think a lot of people were disappointed. Lightning also had some problems during the high fee time, and I think the fact that there was this period of high fees itself is not particularly like concerning to me or anything. Like you said, it's like miners are making more money, and even like if this becomes a more frequent occurrence, like there's other market forces that at play here too. Like people could bring more of these old miners online, like because it'll become more profitable. Like the like you could have a situation where hobbyists kind of hoard these old miners for cheap, for example, that are not efficient enough to be mined on a regular basis, but maybe only during fee spikes or something like that. So I think just generally speaking, like the situation itself is not long-term concerning for Bitcoin or anything. Like I think there are plenty of game theory and like market forces that will solve this problem if this becomes a frequent enough problem. And as far as Lightning goes, I mean, it's layer 2. It doesn't use there isn't as much of blockchain footprint when you transact in Lightning, but nevertheless, there is some blockchain footprint when you use Lightning. Namely, for when you want to onboard to Lightning, you need to open a channel, and that requires doing things on the chain. And I think that was one of the. I mean, it's kind of obvious in hindsight. Everybody actually kind of knew it, but it was, I think, the first time a lot of people were actually experiencing it. Of like, hey, fees are high. Let me just use Lightning. Oh well, I don't have a channel already open. Well, now I can't open a channel because I had to pay a high fee for that. So maybe it means everybody should be sort of already onboarded to Lightning. If you want to be prepared for a situation like this in the future, that might be kind of one way to think about it. But also, I think this, it's not just onboarding. Like if you want to rebalance, oftentimes there has to be an on-chain footprint that you would have to do for that, and so that would also be affected by high fee environments, and the wallets themselves, as we observed, like the more on-chain footprint there is, the more they were affected. Like Moon is like a good example, right? I mean, Moon uses submarine swaps for a lot of what they do. Submarine swaps is basically this idea of swapping on-chain Bitcoin with Lightning Bitcoin in a trustless way. So Moon very heavily leverages that tech to kind of give basically a great UI UX to customers, where you have one balance in a Moon wallet, right? And you can send it to
Yeah.
on chain or to Liquid
Until it doesn't.
until it doesn't. Yeah, I mean that's a great UX, right? Like you abstract away all these
Yeah. Yeah.
things from the user, and you still do it trustlessly.
Yep.
And I have to look up this thing every time I want to learn. Like I kind of it's somewhat complicated, and I forget how Moon works every time, and then I have to go look at their old blog posts, and I kind of understand it. But like the bottom line is their tech has a bigger blockchain footprint, and
Yep.
so they were affected more so than others. And say something like Wallet of Satoshi, which is just completely custodial. So if you want to send from one wallet of Satoshi to another one, I don't know whether internally that's just a database accounting update that they make, or whether they actually send it, or what they do. But either way, I mean, theoretically, they could just do it with a database update with zero on-chain and
Yep.
footprint, right? Specifically, if it's Wallet of Satoshi to Wallet of Satoshi. But even otherwise, like if you are onboarding to Wallet of Satoshi, they could theoretically do it even in a high fee environment without actually opening a specific channel for you, because it's all custodial anyway.
Yep.
So, which of course in and of itself is, depending on a lot of things, problematic. If you're using it for a small amount, I suppose it's okay. So, yeah. So it comes down to, I think, on-chain footprint, and this is, I think, something that is probably going to become more and more of a thing of like, um, yes, you're using Lightning, but how much are you touching the chain?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly right. And so Moon, we saw their fees go through the roof, and they're still high. Um, I had a look earlier today. A friend of mine did a transaction for, I don't know, it's like 1,000 rand or something, and they ended up paying 25 rand in fees,
Mm,
which not a lot. It's like 0.25%. It's
yeah,
very
yeah,
low.
yeah.
But if you're used to paying like, I don't know, 30 or
Close to
40
zero.
cents,
Yeah. Yeah.
close to zero, you're like, it's like a 100x increase.
Yeah.
It's a big one, and obviously Moon, kind of their design principle they took into account was like a low on-chain fee environment.
Mm,
Um, it's optimized for that. It doesn't work super well in a high fee environment. So it's interesting to see like what the other guys are doing, and obviously like something like Wallets of Satoshi that's just purely custodial. Like, cool, they're going to work fine. You just have to trust them, which is a problem. But some of the other wallets are doing, some interesting things. I think it was Phoenix. I think it's Phoenix. There's a different model to Moon, and their fees didn't go up nearly as much as Moon did. Um, but yeah, it's we in this trial and error phase, right? Like people think this thing is built out completely. It's not at all.
mhm.
We have to go through these scenarios where fees spike to really see what works and what doesn't. It's all still experiment, especially with
Yeah.
Lightning.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually not very, unfortunately, not very widely used tech called hosted channels, where it's this idea of like, um, it's kind of custodial. So but the way you interact with that custodian is through this so-called hosted channel, where it doesn't have a footprint on chain, but you can still cryptographically prove the how much, say, the custodian owes you if the channel were to be closed. So, and there's also some advantages to interoperability, where imagine a situation where I have this wallet that supports hosted channels. I could switch from one custodian to another, easily, if enough custodians supported the protocol. So that's kind of somewhere, I think of it as somewhere between like Wallet of Satoshi and say Phoenix or something. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there hasn't been too much adoption for that. It's I think the NBD wallet is the only one that supports it at the moment. It's from the gaming company GBD.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and this is the thing, right? Like, there's so many different technologies that are competing.
Yeah.
and we're gonna figure out what works. And some technologies are just early, like they're
Yeah.
just not like we jump into the liquid thing. Like I think liquid is like a tech before its time, like because I've used liquid now for the first time in this high fee environment.
Hmm.
And it's great. It's fast. It's private. It's cheap. I was like, this is great. Maybe I mean you guys are Bitcoin Reserve is part of the Liquid Federation, as I understand, and
Right.
you guys sell. You do the swap out on or the peg in for Liquid to your clients. Maybe you want to tell us a bit more about Liquid and how it works.
Yeah, Liquid is also a layer. I mean, depending on who you ask, layer 2 or layer 1.5. Um, it is a side chain of Bitcoin. So there is no native token in Liquid like Ethereum, and
Yeah.
it is the or you could say the native token of Liquid is Bitcoin, that is pegged into the Liquid network. So you can think of it as like a completely different. It's a completely different blockchain, but it is still sort of anchored to the Bitcoin blockchain. There is no proof of work mining. It's based on the mining, if you want to call it that, is done, block signing, I should say, is done by the functionaries in the network, which are essentially like companies spread out, intentionally spread out across different jurisdictions. And Blockstream is the kind of the tech provider, but there's all these other companies that you can see on their website that are functionaries, and then there's a larger group of companies, which is the federation. And I believe I got the terms right. The but and the block creation again is not done by proof of work mining. It's done by the functionaries signing off on these transactions. So there is a process of pegging into Liquid where you take Bitcoin and you kind of quote convert them into LBTCs, and then you can use it on the Liquid network, and you can peg out, which is kind of the opposite of that. And that's Liquid network itself has kind of, I suppose, comparing it to Lightning, there's some differences in that this you don't have to manage liquidity in a channel yourself, so it's somewhat easier from a UX standpoint for the actual user to use, but there are different trust. The trust model is different, and which is one of the reasons why there's been a lot of resistance to that. I guess people don't like the federation idea. Some people, and but we like, I'm personally very I am a Liquid fan. I want to see more adoption on it, and I think in the last year or so we are actually seeing that. And Liquid has features like confidential transactions where the asset and the amounts are blinded. Liquid has asset issuance abilities where a company, say, could issue the equity tokens on the Liquid network, um, and there are a couple of companies that are doing that. And also recently, El Salvador has created a legal framework for doing that. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. And a specific project on Liquid that I'm very excited about is called Fuji Money. So Fuji.money, I believe, is their website. It's basically creating a US dollar pegged. If you, I mean, it's not pegged, might not even be the right word, but an asset that tracks US dollar value, but it's natively on Liquid and it's backed by Bitcoin. So
That sounds that sounds complex. It sounds like things can break.
yeah, it does, and especially after Terra Luna and everything, like I mean, that was like the first thought that
Algorithmic stablecoins, right?
algorithmic stablecoins. But I think it is actually a lot simpler to reason about than Terra. It's actually quite simple. Like, it's, you over collateralize Bitcoin, you're able to mint these Fuji USD tokens, and if the price of Bitcoin goes down such that it's not enough to back the USD tokens, Fuji USD tokens that were minted. There's a process for burning the equivalent amount of FUSD tokens and redeeming that Bitcoin. That's at a very high level.
Okay. And how does the assets issuance work on Liquid? So, for example, they did the volcano bonds, right? Those are issued on Liquid. How does that process work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the volcano bonds itself is not quite out yet. I believe it will be this year to actually be available for people to buy, but it's Liquid has I mean, anybody can issue an asset on Liquid. It's actually quite easy. I believe I'm not sure if there's a web interface for that quite yet, but it's like anybody with a little bit of technical skills can do it. And it's basically, I mean, it's if you think about it as a giant database, if you think about the Liquid network itself as a giant database that's distributed, you can think of it as like creating a new entity there and being able to keep track of like how much of that entity there is, who owns it, and so on. And you can like send it to each other. So I mean, it's without actually getting into too much of the technical weeds, it's basically like you can think of it as like a database where you now have a new entity that you can keep track of ownership of the different units of it, and you can send it to each other on if you have a Liquid wallet. And there's also, interestingly enough, a system built into Liquid where if you want to restrict some tokens to be able to be sent to only some specific wallets, you can do that. And this is important to comply with securities laws and so on, because you can't, there are restrictions to who can own a security. Like, for example, most of these securities, like US citizens can't own it because then they have to comply. The company issuing this has to comply with US securities laws, which a lot of them don't want to do. So, there's a way for you to whitelist your, it's called an AMP ID that is associated with a wallet. And that has to be done, in the traditional KYC type way. And there are providers that do that. So once you do that, then you've kind of established, okay, this wallet is owned by a person who can do X, Y, and Z. So the asset, I mean, it's a bit of a tangent, but asset issuance kind of comes with that as well.
But the upside of that is that issuing the asset, you don't have to go an IPO like on the stock exchange and go through all of that.
That's right. Yeah.
It's a much more efficient process to issue.
Yeah, like
really.
Exactly. Like a small business in El Salvador, right? Like, let's say somebody who's running some sort of farm or a ranch or whatever can, if they want to raise money, they can issue equity on Liquid, and people from all over the world except for the restricted countries, can participate in that. You don't need to go to get listed on a stock exchange or whatever. And the tokens themselves can now have a secondary market, like and it can be a peer-to-peer market. Like right now, there's no, as far as I'm aware of, there's no peer-to-peer way. Let's say I have a stock in Google, like to sell it to you. I don't even know how that would work, given that we are in two different jurisdictions.
No, you can't.
So, yeah, exactly. So with Liquid, you give me your wallet, a Liquid invoice from your wallet, and I send it to you.
But then so you have to do the peg in the beginning, right? If you're issuing those tokens, it's got to be pegged into Bitcoin, right?
So the peg in, peg out aspect is just for the native token, which is Bitcoin. So that is specifically for that. If you want to have LBTC. Now, why do you need LBTC? That's how you pay the transfer fee. So That's one of the reasons why you would want that. Like, for example, if I want to issue an asset and I want to send it to you, I would need to pay a mining fee equivalent, right? For that, that would be
Sure.
done.
Yeah.
That would be paid in LBTC. So that's one reason I would need LBTC. So that's where I
Okay.
begin, for example. Or there are other ways to acquire LBTC other than you yourself pegging in. You could just buy it.
Okay. Okay. So if I were to issue a security for my company,
Yeah.
I don't actually have to put up a set amount of Bitcoin as collateral to issue those tokens.
Oh,
So
no, no,
you
no.
can just trade them.
No. You don't. There is no, the collateral is your company, and it's
Yeah.
like anybody buying it. It's trusting that the officers of the company are competent and honest and so on. Like, it's just like buying any other stock.
It's just like buying stocks.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so this is great, right? Because like what the shitcoiners get wrong, in my opinion, is that they've overcomplicated things. They try to create a security, but then there's this whole tokenomics nonsense that turns out doesn't work, and
yeah.
that's running in the background as well. So you don't really have like accurate price discovery for what a valuation of a company is.
Right, right.
You've got like this obfuscation layer of shitcoinery that goes on, and
Yeah,
so that that's where the problem starts. So essentially, the way I understand it now is like it's the same as issuing stocks. It's just much more efficient and it's much easier to
exactly.
transfer.
Yeah, it's way more reachable to the average person
Yeah,
because
yeah,
how the heck do I list my little company on Nasdaq? Like, I would have to go
you can't.
public, and
Yeah,
I don't even know how I would do it. But
yeah,
um, it's more accessible, and then it is a lot more interoperable in the sense like it's like I can I can directly send you my stock and sell it to you if I want to.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I understand. So Liquid is not a competitor for Lightning then at all. Liquid's like an asset layer, whereas
I
Lightning's a
mean,
payments
yeah,
layer.
it is an asset layer. It can be it could be seen as a competitor to Lightning in the sense that you could just use LBTC for your payments.
Yeah, sure.
And there is a case to be made for that. It's got very quick confirmation times as opposed to the 10-minute or whatever on the main chain. It's not instant like Lightning. Um,
Yeah,
and specifically with the payment use case, Liquid has the advantage that you don't have to manage liquidity.
yeah,
There's no channel management, there's no state management. You could go completely offline, no problem. So there is a certain aspect of simplicity that Liquid has compared to Lightning. And the Yeah, but the trade-off is really kind of it's not instant, and it's a different trust model, I would say.
yeah. But so, for example, if you're a company that's issued assets on Liquid, like let's we fast forward 20 years and like every company is issuing their securities like this, um, those companies, and if they're doing B2B transactions with each other, they've already got Liquid wallets because they've issued their securities on the
Mm-hmm.
Liquid blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
Then transacting with each other via Liquid makes sense, right? Like if
Yeah,
you're doing like
absolutely.
settlement, balance of trade payments and stuff,
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, and this was
But
one
you
of the
can't do micropayments.
well, yeah, I mean, you probably can right now because the fees are so low, but
Sure.
but
But streaming payments, like you do like the podcasting
oh,
2.0
yeah,
model. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think there is any such, yeah, there isn't an equivalent model on that for on Liquid. I don't think there's a concept of streaming payments or anything, but as for the small amounts themselves, you could send it on Liquid now because the fees are so low. But the
Yep.
but one kind of going back to what you said of like companies doing B2B transactions and so on, that was actually one of the original um, widely talked about use case for Liquid of like exchanges settling
Yeah.
with each other and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And but when it's like large amounts, like with Lightning, you need to have that channel
Gotta
capacity,
have the liquidity. Yeah.
liquidity. Yeah, I mean, not just on your side, but like the whole routing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so how does the fee market work in Liquid? Can fees spike, or are fees just stay in a range? Like how does that work? Because
it's
they're not
exactly like
mining, right?
Bitcoin. It's exactly like main chain. Fees can spike, but right now the usage is quite low that I
Oh, it's a
don't.
block space thing.
Yeah, it's a block-based thing. Yeah,
Okay, got you.
yeah.
And what's the size of the blocks then on Liquid?
Oh, actually, I don't know. I forget. I knew this at one point, but yeah, I don't know.
Sorry, I put you on the
Oh
spot
no,
there with
that's all
this
right.
one,
That's
but
all right.
yeah. Yeah, man, it's very interesting. Like I think it was 1,500 sat transaction on Liquid, and
Mm,
it's like
mm.
1 minute confirmation time, and the fees were minuscule.
Yeah,
It's great. It's great. I've only done the one transaction, but very interested to see more of this. And just if Adam Back is just a man ahead of his time, right?
yeah,
He's just 10 years ahead of everyone else. Um, so yeah, I expect to see this picking up more in the future. It's very interesting. But yeah, let's switch back to Lightning. Lightning, obviously, as we've seen now in this challenging fee environment, has its limitations and has its trade-offs. One of the issues with Lightning is issuing invoices, and those invoices
mm,
expire.
yeah,
So you can't just receive a payment like with Bitcoin. You can just put up a QR code or an address and just receive payments, right?
right.
With Lightning, you can't do that. Well, you couldn't until LNURL came along. So LNURL allows you to have a static payment address that you can just receive payments to. Yeah, do you mind explaining a bit more? So that's how that
Yeah,
works.
yeah. LNURL, I really like it. It is. I think of it as sort of a layer on top of Lightning itself. So, like you said, Lightning is like an interactive protocol. So, if I want to send you a Lightning payment, I have to somehow reach you off channel, off band, and say, "Hey, send me an invoice." I can't just give it to you. So I need to somehow contact you, tell you to give me an invoice, and then I pay the invoice, right? Um, this is an example of something like where I wish I didn't have to contact you. I wish I could just pay it to you, and it's this sort of problem that LNURL solves, where it's like it formalizes some of the interactions that are required for to get to the invoice. Um, um, you could like to solve this specific problem. There is an idea of LNURL Pay, where you put a static in like a QR code up, or it doesn't have to be a QR code, I suppose. But what that means is I could scan the QR code, and then my wallet that supports LNURL could scan that QR code and ask your Lightning node to send me an invoice. The Lightning node sends me an invoice, and then I pay it. So basically, that extra steps that were required to force your Lightning node to send me an invoice, force in codes, I suppose, is formalized now into a protocol. And as long as a wallet can support it, you completely abstracted all that away from the user, and now you have a way to put up a static QR code, for example, and simply receive payments from anyone via Lightning. And kind of the opposite of that is LNURL withdraw, where if it if you want to, I like the example of a let's say there's a Lightning ATM where you put physical cash in, and they want to give you Lightning Bitcoin back to you. Well, how would they do that? You would have to create a Lightning invoice from your wallet and somehow send it to the machine, right? Now you could imagine a scenario where the machine itself has a camera, and you put the phone in front of it, and the machine scans your invoice and sends it to you, and so on. But that's a little clunky. So the way the machine would do is they would put up a LNURL withdrawal code, and you scan that withdrawal code with a wallet that supports LNURL withdrawal, which communicates to the wallet, hey, please send me an invoice for this much to this endpoint, and the wallet would do it, and then you get the Lightning back. So from a user experience, it looked like you just withdrew money from a QR code. So so it improves the UI, and it makes it easy to abstract away a lot of complexities. And then sort of a step above, kind of one more layer up, is the concept of Lightning address, which is cool, where instead of like LN Pay, where instead of putting up a QR code to receive, you simply put up a Lightning address, which looks like an email address, where I can send Lightning Bitcoin to that email address, as long as my wallet, again, also supports that protocol. So it looks like something at something.com, and you can send Lightning Bitcoin to that. And I believe LN URL has a couple of other things, like logging in with LN URL, I believe. I'm not too familiar with those, but I'm personally excited about, withdraw, pay, and Lightning addresses.
Yeah, I might be speaking out of turn here, but I think Machinkura uses LNURL, the addresses. So they use your cell phone number as the address to pay your sats to.
Ah,
So I
okay.
don't know if you're familiar with Machinkura.
I know about the project, but I did not know that they.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously it's all on feature phones, right? It's on like old school cell phones, and you access it via USSD, and the only like identifier you've got is your cell phone number, or you can create a username, and then you have a username instead of the cell phone number to send the sats to. So that way you can always restore it if you lose your phone or whatever. You can access from any device.
Yeah.
So it's very, very cool. Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's very interesting to see people are building these cool things on top of Lightning as well, because
Right.
People seem to think that Lightning is like going to solve the problems, but it's a work in progress. And like if you try to run your own Lightning node and do self custody Lightning, it's tough. Like it's way harder than like just doing on chain Bitcoin. Like channel management and all that stuff is it's a pain.
Yeah.
And like tooling that's coming out is making it a lot easier. But my concern is that if we don't have that good tooling, we end up in a situation where you just have custodial Lightning providers, and then you have the same problem as fiat again, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's custodial Lightning is just so tempting because
it's so easy, works so well.
Yeah.
Until they take your money away,
Right.
which is it happens. It happens to the best of us. It happens to nation states. They have their money taken away by other nation states. So self custody is obviously the way. But yeah, very exciting. And speaking of self custody, so you guys at Bitcoin Reserve, a very similar model to what we have at Bitvice, and that's you're a self custody Bitcoin only brokerage. What are you guys working on at the moment? What's your product offering you guys are working on?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we basically force users to take custody. Like, you cannot click the buy button until you give us an address of where you want to withdraw it to. So a lot of people like that. A lot of people don't particularly like that because they want us to hold their Bitcoin, which is always a hard kind of product decision. But
there's plenty of services that offer them that.
Yeah,
They've got plenty of
exactly.
options for that.
That's true. That's true. We are very excited about Liquid, and we sell directly Liquid Bitcoin. So if somebody wants to just convert fiat to Liquid Bitcoin, that one way to do it, if you are in a supported jurisdiction, is to go to Bitcoin Reserve. So you don't have to worry about pegging in or anything like that. And then we also offer stablecoin USDT on USDT Tether on Liquid, which unfortunately hasn't had as much traction as on Tron and Ethereum and so on, because of, well, that's where all the gambling and everything happens. So there is, but it is picking up, and we hope the Liquid version of Tether gets more and more adoption.
Because Tether on Ethereum is like almost unusable. Like, it's so expensive to move money around. Obviously, that's why everyone's moved to Tron and the other, centralized shitcoin chains. But it's great to see it come to Liquid, because now that I understand Liquid a bit better, this makes a lot of sense, right? Like cheap, fast, confidential transactions. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. And so we want to offer Volcano bonds when it's available. So that's kind of on our radar. Yeah, there's just a lot of cool. Fuji money is on our radar in terms of integration and so on. So yeah, we focused on a lot of liquid tech. We are part of the Liquid Federation. So that's what I'm personally most excited about. I just it feels like Liquid is actually getting some traction this year. A lot of people building on it, and I'm actually Lightning is really cool too. But there's a lot of people working on Lightning, so that's great.
Yeah, they are.
But I just think Liquid needs a little more love. So
Absolutely.
hoping to
Yeah.
hoping
Yeah.
to be part of that ecosystem, and bring it to life, if you will,
Yeah.
more to life. Um,
So, so you guys don't offer Lightning at Bitcoin Reserve as a withdrawal option?
we don't, not at least right now. And part of the reason is also we kind of serve high net worth clients, so these
Yep.
purchases are in like large quantities.
Yep.
So Lightning doesn't quite work for that anyway.
Yep.
So that's
Yeah, for
part of the
sure.
reason why, like, it just hasn't been a need for us.
Yeah.
That said,
And the other issue is if someone comes to you and they want to buy some Sats, and they haven't got inbound liquidity, you can't send them Sats, right? Like
right,
so
right,
yeah, unless they have a custodial wallet, which defeats the point of doing self custody Bitcoin and buying through you guys in the first place.
yeah, yeah.
Um, you
I
know,
think at least
so
some of
yeah.
the exchanges where the way they kind of handle that is you just have to open a channel with them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or they
Yeah.
open a channel. Yeah, they open a channel with you. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But so if you're the problem is if you've got non-technical users who just
right,
want to get some Bitcoin exposure and
exactly.
now they have to open channels, so just their
Yeah,
eyes glaze over, right? It's not, it
yeah,
just doesn't work. It was
yeah.
much easier if you could say to them, download Green Wallet and send me a liquid address and I'll send you some
Right,
sats.
right,
Like
right.
that's a lot. That's a much better. It's much better
Yeah,
UX flow.
yeah.
Interesting. And then when it comes to your guys' transaction, like settlement and stuff, do you settle instantly to the clients? Or how does it work?
We our formal guarantee is 48 hours, so we just batch up everything that occurred in the, say, last 48-hour window, and send it to the customer. But in practice, it's actually a lot faster than that. It's usually
Yeah.
within like 12 hours or so.
Yeah, yeah. The limitation obviously is the banking rail. Like that's where the slow part comes because the client. So I
Yes.
think we operate in exactly. I think our operations flow is exactly the same as yours, where client will say buy, he'll send you money,
Yep.
and then he waits for 48 hours. He hasn't got his
Right.
Bitcoin
Yep.
because the
Yep.
money is sitting in the banking system and it hasn't actually reached your bank account yet.
Yep.
The
And
company's bank account, and you're not sending anyone Bitcoin until the money's in your bank account because there's no givesies backsies on Bitcoin,
that's
right?
right.
Once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
it's like
Yeah.
you send money and it's like just goes into the ether, like with the banking system. Like, I hope it comes out on the other side, but
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know how it works with you guys in with the European banking system, but for me, having seen how our banking system works, kind of underneath the hood, and having dealt with banks as a Bitcoin company, people have a lot of undue faith in banks, man.
Mm,
they,
mm,
they are.
mm.
That's they trusting. They trust. There's a lot of trust there that shouldn't be there. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty scary. And are you guys? This might be a bit of inside baseball. Like, feel free to say no to not want to answer this. But are you guys seeing any issues with like Operation Choke Points and banks getting difficult with you guys as Bitcoin service providers?
A little bit. I'd say it has affected us, but not to the point of like uh, where we had to like give up a lot of business for it or anything like that. Mostly because we don't touch the US anyway. So
Yeah, yeah. The thing is, like, neither do we, obviously. But it's banks are like sheep. They do what the other banks are doing,
yeah,
and they just super concerned about compliance, obviously.
yeah.
Um, yeah. What jurisdiction are you guys? Where's your company registered?
The company is registered in Estonia, and the license for Bitcoin, like crypto license, is we have the license from Poland.
Okay, got you. Okay, yeah, it's interesting how Estonia and the Baltic states really moved quickly to try to attract as much digital business like internet companies as possible, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
make it
right.
easy for you to set up. You know, that Estonian e-citizenship thing is like easy to set up, start a company there. They
Yeah,
want your business. It's great.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, not all jurisdictions think like that though. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hopefully, El Salvador is moving more and more in that direction, and we'll all
yeah,
be living there. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. We'll be sipping cocktails and eating pupusas there soon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed this chat, and getting to find out more about liquid and lighting has been fantastic. And for you, it's the start of the day. For me, it's the end of the day. But yeah, I hope to chat soon. And please send my best regards to the team.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.